Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Forge and Brains podcast. We are actually in Tangent, Oregon. We're here for the Sarah Baker Benefit Clinic, and I'm also joined with Mike Poe, Kurt Fisk, and Jason Smith. And figured we'd do a podcast while we have all these guys here in our presence. We've heard from Mike before on the podcast, but and Kurt actually, but we haven't necessarily heard from Jason before, and might be kind of good to hear how Jason got initially started in shoeing horses.
Well, thank you for having me on and doing this podcast.
Thank you.
It started after high school. I went to Oklahoma State Horseshoeing School, Reggie Kessler School, in 1989. Came back home to Northern California and just kind of hung my shingle out. And thankfully I got involved with the WSFA, who had a real active association at the time, and fell in with a lot of good people, steered me in the right direction, and just was able to take advantage of all the events they had going on.
Who were some of those people that helped steer you in that right direction at that time?
I would say, Alice Johnson, Margie Lee, Emil Correa. Those are probably the main influences. But they were doing a lot of clinics, and so I was exposed to Bob early on, Bob Marshall, and Graham Moon. Nice. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones. But Jim Poor.
Was Edward around?
Edward Martin.
Was around then?
Yeah. I mean...
in that area, or... Because he was...
Alice actually brought him in.
Okay.
We had a draft shoeing clinic with Edward, draft shoeing and blacksmithing clinic. So that was phenomenal, as you can imagine. Yeah. Just having Edward there and just getting, one-on-one instruction.
Man. Yeah, no doubt.
That amount of insight.
Was very fortunate. I just feel very fortunate just to have been, where I was at the time, and just had so many opportunities to work with some great people in our industry early on. And that always pushed me to, want to get better and do more and, be involved. And obviously being a member of the AFA
so was it a pretty easy path into the AFA after being with Western States and
I think
getting going on that?
For sure, because people in the WSFA were also active in the AFA, so it was just an easy kind of path to go down.
Yeah.
It's just like I said, I feel very fortunate to be at that place at that time, just surrounded by all these great folks people. And
right on.
So, and from there it's just being on the American Farriers team and with all the great people involved with that and places I've been able to travel to, and now what's going on with the WCB. I mean, our standards in the industry just keep continuing to get better.
Growing and growing.
Keep growing and growing, which is just awesome.
So can you talk about what competing was like for you when you started out, what that road looked like, what it was like getting onto the team, and how many years were you on the team? How long were you on?
It was, I think, 94, 96, and there were years that there was split teams and
gold and silver
team, but and then through 2000 was my last year on the team.
Yeah.
So you were only at about shoeing for 5 years until you made it to the AFT?
Yeah, I was.
You said
94. Yeah,
got
I
done
was
in 89?
alternate. Yeah, and that was. There's
got to be a dog in the podcast.
Yeah.
Craig was on that team, and Jim Poor, and I think Bob Pethick.
I mean, that's pretty incredible. You get out of horseshoeing school in '89, and then 5 years later, you're making it to the.
I like I said, was surrounded by the right people, and competing was a big part of what I wanted to do, mainly just to get better.
Yeah.
I mean.
So can you talk about that 94 team? Because if that was the lineup, that means that you stepped in and took Shane's place, right?
I didn't. I did not. I forget who stepped in on that year. It's
Because 93 was those three guys you just mentioned,
right,
plus Shane.
Yes, and so I was still an alternate. I didn't compete as a team member. I traveled with the team.
Yeah.
But God, I wish I could remember who. I'm sure I'll get killed for not remembering.
Yeah, you'd be good.
Yeah, but it was like I said, just it was kind of a dream come true to be on the team.
So you pretty much had your sights set on when you were in horseshoeing school. You knew you wanted to compete, and
I don't know if I did at the time, but I mean it definitely developed through there. I mean, I think I knew I liked making shoes, and I think anybody early on in their career, they're very enthusiastic, and you don't really know what direction you're going to go. But I'd already kind of shot horses before I went to shoeing school, so and being exposed to the competition shoemaking aspect of things, that definitely was something that was a direction I kind of wanted to go.
then like the first year working with these guys, like, was it hard? How many times had like Craig and them been on the team until you got on the team?
I think he'd been on there a couple times.
Yeah.
But, and he'd competed a lot, and
was it nerve-wracking being the rookie coming on
absolutely.
the team with guys like that?
It was perfect because I could kind of be the backup quarterback. I could kind of sit on the sidelines and just soak it all in.
Yeah.
With not really having the, I guess, pressure.
Right.
Right.
I could learn.
Yeah.
So
you could perform if you needed to, but
yeah, I mean, I like to think so, but I was just in awe of being around these guys, and just was just soaking it all in.
Yeah.
It's got to be like the primo learning experience, because you do just get to be the fly on the wall for all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a lot I didn't know, so I didn't really want to be, competing necessarily at the international right then, but I was fortunate enough to be there.
Right on.
So
cool.
Yeah.
How was the first trip to Stoneleigh?
It was awesome.
Yeah,
it's
how eye-opening.
It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, I think first time over there, but just to see the level of work, at the time.
Did you guys go over and were you practicing in somebody's shop prior, or was it a pretty much straight trip to?
No, I think that year we were at the British Army barracks.
Okay.
And,
right on.
If I remember correctly.
In Melton?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think we got over there a few days ahead of time.
Yeah.
Kind of
had a practice, had a couple
goes.
goes.
Our legs under us. And,
right on.
And went from there.
Shook off the plane trip and.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's always an adventure.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Mike, you've been on WCB team a number of times. Like, what was it like the first time you ever made it on a team with those guys, and who were the other 3 members or 4 members that were on the team that first year when you got on?
So I got on in 2020.
2020?
It was 2020 because, it was the 2019 season. So we were the 2020 team. So we were the COVID team, right?
Oh, yeah.
We were the all dressed up and nowhere to go team.
Mm-hmm.
So Carl Via won national champion that year.
Yep.
And I think Dylan was reserve. Like Dylan Crane.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Carl and Dylan and Andrew Nielsen and me. Like I got in the fourth hole. And when we got on, the World Horseshoeing Classic at Richmond was still happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like we just like knuckled down that that's what we were getting ready for because we didn't know what else we were going to do. I think we were going to do the ECA in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happened was COVID. And everything got shut down. And like as news would come in that something was getting shut down, we would just be like, oh,
damn it.
Well, we'll work on this now.
Yeah.
Like we just kept on being
Set the
like
next
that
goal.
tiny little disappointment and like get excited about whatever we were doing next.
Yeah.
So we worked towards that, and then things started moving forward to what we've got now, which is kind of WCB team events. So we got to do those, and that got us ready. But we really just did those up until last year.
Kind of why Craig started to introduce like more of those like 4-man team.
Yeah,
contests.
because we didn't have anywhere to play. Like, and nobody did. It wasn't just us. It was the AFT didn't have anywhere to go and play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, any of the pickup teams where guys like the team you're on, that guys just want to get together and have a go.
Yeah.
And there was nothing for them to do. There was no classic for them to do. There was no going out of the country at all to do something.
No individual contests.
So there was an opportunity for it, and the decision had already been made to go from the 5 contest individual contest format to 3.
Yeah, I'd always kind of wondered why that had went from 5 to 3.
Well, part of it was because of the Masters at Spruce Meadows, doing because that was supposed to happen originally in 2020.
That's right.
And it got shut down because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But because that is such a big undertaking, it was like, well, let's back off from having the 5 contest format. It's time to move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the way I understood it. And I'm talking for Craig and Christine, and I can't
Don't
really do
necessarily
that.
know all the fine details, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, but it kind of made sense. And then it turned into like a 3-and-3. You know, we had 3 team contests and 3 individual contests.
That makes sense.
And now we've backed off again. There's just 2 team contests and 3 individual contests. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading baseball cards when I talk about like contests and stuff, you know? It's like we turn into a sports podcast, right? But anyway,
we need that. Really.
Yeah, kind of, I guess.
Get people involved, like kind of get hyped up about it.
But yeah, so that team that I was on initially, we repeated in 21. So the same team stayed together.
And because there was no competitions to decide that, so that you guys
just
got lumped.
There was another. I mean, the WCB never stopped.
Oh,
there was a 2020 season. There was a 21 season. We never quit. We went and went and went.
Yeah, things moved around a little bit.
Yeah, the contest moved where we were doing it. Like instead of doing the horse fair, like we're back at the horse fair in Madison this year.
Oh, sweet.
But instead of doing that, we went to 10 Pen Alley. You know, we're in the bowling alley.
Oh yeah.
And we just kept on rocking because we didn't want to stop.
That year, New Mexico happened. That was the first contest of the year, and then it was.
Then we went to Madison.
Yeah.
And then on to Fort Worth.
Right.
And all of it was places that were friendly.
Right.
Right? Because you got to say we were kind of bucking the system because we just weren't going to quit.
Right.
And we're an outdoor event. You know, it's not like we were all cramming ourselves into a gym, sweating and you know, breathing each other's air and licking doorknobs. But I mean, a little bit of doorknob licking, but don't judge me.
Yeah, it's got to be like a low blow. You know, you've worked so hard for many years to make the team.
Yeah.
And then COVID happens, and you just
the world comes to a standstill.
Yeah, you don't get to go
crazy.
perform. And
Man, it was great though. So me and Andrew Nielsen live really close together. Like we're not far apart, and both of us fly out of BWI in Baltimore, or we did. We would show up at the airport and nobody was there. We'd have the best parking. You'd just walk through security and be like, "Hey, Janet," you know, like because we were flying all the time, and then get on a flight and it'd be like. We didn't even have a row to ourselves. We had a section to ourselves.
Oh, damn.
Like, if the exit rows was just me and Nielsen.
So were you guys like getting together and practicing more often?
So all of us got together and practiced a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like we dug in like ticks and decided we were going to do something.
Yeah.
And went really hard. And then for the 22 season, or the 22 team, so we qualified in 21, Andrew decided to take a step back, decided to be, like, he needed to work on his business, work on some other things, so he stepped off the team, and Stan Mullen stepped in. And, like, I think people were taking bets on whether me and Stan were going to get along.
Oh.
Because we're both, like, big, strong personalities. And the first practice, we were like, hey, are we best friends now? And it kind of worked out. Like, we were going and doing karate in the garage, you know?
Oh, damn.
It was
Building
good
bunk
times.
beds. And...
Yeah, we built bunk beds in the middle of the night with no power tools. But that was the team that really early on, like, we got together and immediately we found out about Scotland happening, the Heavy Horse Championships.
Mm-hmm.
And we just pushed into that, like, leaned all the way into it.
So how long... When did the Scotland contest happen from being told COVID is now a thing and there's no more traveling, no more contests to go to? How long did you know?
So we found out at the beginning of 2022.
Okay.
Like early in 22, we found out that Jim Balfour was like spearheading it.
Hosting.
Yeah, the World Clydesdale show was happening in Scotland. And since they had the Scottish horses in Scotland, Jim decided to do that contest, the heavy horse contest.
Okay.
And it was like, as soon as we heard about it, we're like, yes, we're there, sign us up.
We got something to work towards.
Yeah. And we got real serious about it. We did Pennsylvania, was our first show together, was our first contest together. And kind of as soon as we got off Pennsylvania, we were on to building draft shoes, you know?
How many days was that contest there, the Scotland one?
It was 3 days. So it was 3/4 forward with masslets on day one.
No heel, no like...
No heels, flat shoes.
Okay.
Day two was specimen shoemaking.
Oh, so not on feet?
Yeah, not on feet. So, and it was cool. I don't know whether, so Beanie and Craig were the judges.
Okay.
And whether they planned it or not, they had a set of shoes. So they had left, right, front, and behind.
Oh.
And it worked out that our team, we all just had our foot.
Yeah.
I haven't made anything but a right front for 3
Yeah, you told me that
for
earlier.
3 years, all I made was right fronts.
Uh-huh.
Well, and that specimen shoe was you should talk about that a little bit. The shoe you had to make for
that heart bar?
Yeah.
So it was funny. So Craig made the heart bar, and it's 24 inches of 1/2 inch and 1/4 with like this crazy like arced set toe. And
Big bar shoe.
it was a lot of, it weighed 6 pounds.
Holy smoke.
So the mother section weighed 6 pounds. But we had it sorted to where like Carl did a lot of the work with the sledge. Like a lot of it, I figured out how to not have to me just do all the work and make a bar shoe. But it was funny because I guess when Bodie saw what Craig had made, he was like, "Man, you're a dick."
It's a big shoe.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Well,
man.
so the cool thing, and like I gotta shout this, is I made so many of those, and like I didn't want, and it wasn't for me. I made them because I didn't want to let my team down.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you like with a team, you sometimes fight with each other and you don't get along, but like you have to love each other or you're not going to succeed.
Yeah.
You know, and I still like the 4 guys that I did that team with over time. I still like, I love talking to them and I love hearing about what's going on and I want to support them, you know, because I want them to do well.
It's almost like you've grown more as like a friendship, relationship with these guys versus just being on a team.
You end up having a familiar relationship, you know, because like a friendship, me and you can have it falling out and like we won't talk for a while and be pissed off.
Yeah.
With your family, you kind of can't get away with that, right? It's like you can be pissed off and you hate each other a little bit, but my God, you still got to have Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not going to ruin Christmas just because we're a little bit mad over, you know, who spilled the gravy. And that's kind of what it was like. And, like, I'm proud of them. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of all of us as a team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, that back to that heart bar is, so I made so many of those things to not let down my team, and Craig donated that specimen to the AFA auction at convention.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until I was like walking through and I was like, oh, there's my shoe.
Yeah.
Like, and I bid the hell out of it. Like, I was trying to buy it at the auction, and that just got to the point I was like, I can't afford it.
How much?
Oh,
do you
man.
remember how much it went for?
I think it went around like $1,200 or something.
Wow.
And I ran hard. I was like, I'm getting it. It's
Yeah.
going to be mine. And it did not. Like, I didn't win the bid. And I didn't know who I was bidding against. And when they, like, walked it up to the high bidder, like, he walked over to the table, couple tables over from me, and then walked over to me and handed it to me and said, Dusty wanted you to have that.
Oh, that's cool.
So Dusty Franklin bought it and gave it to me. And it was like, man, like, I kind of had to leave the room. And
I've known Dusty. I've seen Dusty do that quite
it's
a
a
few
cool
times.
thing that he does, right?
Mhm.
Like, he's
Super
kind of,
nice guy.
it's his thing, and it's
Yeah.
really encouraging. It makes you want to,
He knows like how much like a person invests into it. You know, like
Yeah.
time and sweat into
Yeah.
making those shoes. And yeah.
well, and like, it's heartwarming. It makes you feel better about your fellow man, and kind of inspires you to do those sorts of things yourself,
Absolutely.
Yes.
you know?
Do you are you Jason? Are you still like in quite close contact with like the guys from when you were on the team?
Yeah, not as much as I probably would like. I mean, and that's my fault. But I mean, it's I can kind of from the outside looking in, kind of seeing what Craig's done, and Jim and Mark, and they've all been successful in their own right. I mean,
Yeah.
and I just feel very fortunate, to have been around them. Shane Carter's another one. Jim Poor, like I said. But just being able to see that they've been successful, I mean, and what they've done. But yeah, I've kind of been out of the loop for a little bit.
What do you primarily like work on horse wise like these days? Like, are you shooting like Western horses or hunters? Or?
The majority of them are hunter jumper dressage horses. So.
And then you're just kind of focused here in like Western Oregon, or
Yes, I mean, I'm pretty fortunate right now that I've got a pretty
You tighten
small
it up,
radius.
right?
Yeah, which
I
in the
thought I'd
past-
heard like a while ago somebody was telling me you were coming all the way up to like kind of where I live to shoot some
Yeah.
horses up there in Monroe,
Yes.
and I thought it was pretty crazy. It's a long way to travel.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I don't go there anymore, and it wasn't my favorite.
Yeah.
But
The travel just kind of wear you down a
yeah,
little
I mean,
bit as
it's
far as trying to
Seattle
maintain.
traffic.
Oh man.
So which is horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, but everything's pretty tight right now, which I'm very fortunate to have. But yeah.
Gives you a little breathing room. You don't have to spend that
Yeah,
much
I don't-
windshield time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not my favorite.
Oh,
but,
man.
Yeah, at one point I was going there. I was still going to California, so it was kind of to have things in one spot now is great.
nice.
Yeah, very very nice.
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Right on.
When you were like trying to prepare for making like the AFT the first year, what were some things like that you done to go out of your way to like practice and like make that team for the first year?
Yeah, I think really it was just trying to get with the other team members and just be around them as much as I could. And just figure out, being the first year on the team, just figure out how the whole team dynamic's how that works out.
Sure.
Did you already like know these guys prior to making the team with them, like Craig and?
I mean, I'd competed against him, but I mean, just knew him in passing. I mean, definitely, as we were on the team together multiple times, obviously you develop a relationship, but
Right.
yeah, I there again, through the local association, had opportunities to practice, the list of shoes, that were on for the convention. So a lot of it was just local, practice stuff.
Did you get to compete in Four Corners at all?
Yes.
I always heard that was a pretty
that was
awesome
always a
con.
big stop on the on the list. And
That Four Corners one, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Is that the like Colorado,
New Mexico, Arizona.
New Mexico contest?
it was typically, when I went, it was at Durango.
Mm-hmm.
And that was always, brought in a lot of top people.
Yeah, I heard that was
compete
a
at.
blast. Like,
Yeah.
that was a cool contest back in the day.
Yeah, it was always well attended. But
Is that the one where they had the fun class too, where you had to bring like a piece of scrap or?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember one of those contests. Somebody was talking about it. You actually had to bring like a piece of just random
That kind of
material,
rings the bell.
and
Yeah.
it was a draw to the hat.
Yeah, I thought I
With,
remember
like,
hearing something
you
about
get,
that.
You get numbered. All the material gets numbered, and it's just a draw to the hat, and it's completely open creativeness.
Uh-huh.
To what you want to make. But I just remember the one contest, and it was somebody really wasn't super excited about Bob Marshall's judging, and they made him a pair of glasses.
Oh,
Just wire rim glasses. And I can't remember if that was the Four Corners. That's obviously a secondhand story for me.
Uh-huh.
But I just remember that
sounds
was standing out.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
It's just funny because like the times that I got to work with Bob a little bit when I was younger, like that was the first hands-on clinic I did was with Bob, and he would like do a demo and he's wearing his reading glasses, and they'd like sneak down his nose and end up on the end of his nose, and he'd look over the top of his glasses at you and say, "Look at what I've done. See what I've done?" So the glasses, that kind of hits.
oh, man.
What kind of advice like would you have for somebody, that's trying to like come up the run and try to make it for their first time, like trying to get?
Take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there, because there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to learn, to compete. I mean, it's podcasts. I mean, just there's all these different platforms, and just take advantage. Just immerse yourself,
Mm-hmm.
in the farrier world, and it's just, I will say there's just so many, much more opportunities.
Yeah. Nowadays.
Easier, nowadays, just at your disposal. There's really not any excuse.
No.
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways people can contact each other and like, basically ask for help if you need it. And
Well, not even just that, but like
Just the resources available.
Yeah,
The
I
amount of
mean,
resources is
yeah.
amazing right now.
yeah.
And just getting better, I think.
I remember
Continues
that
to-
there was some shoe on the list. I don't know if it was Calgary list or whatever. And I remember, faxing the picture, back
Yeah.
and forth. I mean,
Right on.
so that's.
I always
think
kind of
where we
wondered
come
if
since
that was a
then.
thing. Like, if
Yeah.
you guys ever had to like fax back and forth.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a thing, but that's just
Did you compete up in Calgary?
yes. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I think 5 times, something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So, talking about Four Corners and talking about Calgary, because those things still existed when I started. And I always had the attitude of, is like, no, I'm not ready for that. Or with Four Corners, no, it's far.
Yeah.
And it's a traditional contest where you bring your stuff, right?
Right.
And I don't really know anybody to be like, hey, can I use a rig or something like that. But I think about it, and knowing the community, the competitive community now, like I do, I could have competed at Four Corners just by calling
Absolutely.
a random person.
Yep.
Somebody would have brought me a station. I could have flown out and done it,
Right.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Calgary was completely accessible to me, even though I thought I wasn't on that level.
Right.
And those are regrets that I have, because I had to miss out on those things because I got in my own head and said, hey, you're not ready, or you're not worthy, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I really, I wish I had done those things. And I think that's like, if I were to give advice, it's that don't ever think you're not ready.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Jump in.
Jump on
Yeah.
in.
Take the
Yeah.
swing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make your way out there and
Yeah.
just do it.
No matter, if you come in last, that's fine. It's
try.
that whole thing of, what do you call the guy who, finished last in his medical class? gone doctor. Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with this. Like, somebody's going to come in last, and no matter what, you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You tried.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you beat me. I didn't go.
That's true. I know there's always been times where, like, I've been afraid to, go to a contest or something because, like, in fear that, oh, somebody's going to see me suck and then they're going to think I suck.
Right.
And, like, I don't want somebody to think that,
Dude, that's a
about
hard
me.
thing to overcome.
Yeah.
When you get that in your head, and everybody has it in their head, but man, that is a hard hurdle to get over.
Not
Yeah.
being afraid to fail, I
Right.
think is
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've had to get over myself,
Well, I've still got
Yeah.
scars on my knees from crashing my bike when I was a little kid. And it's like, if I was fearless then and unafraid of failure because the experience was worth the risk,
Mm-hmm.
then what happened to me in those intervening years where it was like all of a sudden I'm like, better not. I might scrape my knees. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's it, is like, even if you suck, you get something out of it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Like the first contest I went to Madison in 2011. That was my first individual WCB.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Leeser was judging, and I walked up to Gene. I kind of knew Gene. It's not like we were real good friends, but he knew who I was. I knew who he was.
Yeah.
Right? And I asked him what he was looking for on the table, and he just picked up a shoe, seemingly at random, but it was my shoe. And he said, "Oh, I just want to see if they fit the foot." And I did.
Okay.
And he kind of took the shoe and he gestured with it, like twisted it. And I was like, what do you, I don't understand what you mean. And he was like, well, put that on a foot. And handed it to me, and I went and stared at it for a minute. I was like, buddy, there's no foot here. I don't know if you've had a look around, but it ain't live shoeing day, buddy.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, bend over like you're shoeing a horse and put it on a foot. And I bent down and put it on a foot, and I was like, holy shit, the medial branch doesn't even cover. And he was like, yeah, that's why that's in that place. Is because it misses the medial heel. And that has stuck with me throughout my career. And it's like, anytime I get lost in the weeds and I'm like, is this shoe right? I drop a Pritchell in a nail hole and put it in my lap. Like I'm hot fitting it.
Oh, and then look at it that way.
Yeah.
I see.
We don't look at shoes up, like we pick them up and we hold them up to the sky and stare at them. And who
Yeah,
looks
it's
at a
always
foot
hard.
like that?
No.
If you're looking at a foot like that, you had a bad day, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, like, and that was one of those things. At that point, I decided I was going to start jumping in deep water.
What do you
And-
mean deep water?
Is this you going down the AW path?
Yeah, I'd started down the AW path.
Right. I was just gonna ask, like, did you have that anxiety about, like, coming into that?
So I was blissfully unaware of how unqualified I was to take the associate exam when I took it the first time, because I took it twice. I made it all the way to journeyman without failing an AFA exam, like any portion. I showed up, I took all 3 parts, I passed all 3 parts, I went home.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's what I do. I take horseshoeing exams and pass them. And I went to England and I worked with Andy Reeder-Smith, and Andy taught me so much about me as a horseshoer. Not just about horseshoeing, but about how I was a horseshoer. And like, it was life-changing. And I went and sat the exam at the end of that trip. Like, Andy took me to the train station. I took 20 different train exchanges and ended up in Melton Mowbray, and like, these nice people off the train gave me a ride to my hotel. And then I walked from the hotel up to the army barracks and worked carrying, 80 pounds of tools, because you had to take everything you owned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I sat that exam and knew nothing. But when I started down the path, I had called Craig, because I knew Craig enough to call him. Mm-hmm. I called Craig and was like, what do I do to get better? And he was like, you come compete. He was like, I don't think the theory is going to be a problem for you. I don't think the written's going to be hard. But I think that you're going to struggle with the practical. And if you want to get good at the practical, compete, because you're under pressure. And he was right. And I failed both portions while I was there. I failed the theory because I didn't understand what their theory exam was. Mm-hmm. I think I had the knowledge. I know I had the knowledge. I didn't have the means to communicate the knowledge. I didn't understand how to take a test. The practical, I didn't understand there's a difference between English 381 and American 381. So my ruler lied to me. Like, I just looked at my ruler and I was like, I know what it's talking about. And then I went and cut that and made it, and I was like, holy God, what are you doing? I think I impressed some of those Army guys because, like, I made a bar sheet that came way too big, and they watched me chop the weld out of it and shrink it by a half inch, and they were like, holy shit, look at this guy. And I was like, don't think that's inspirational.
The cowboy from America.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, no, I'm just going to chop stuff up and see how it comes out.
Yeah.
How long ago did you take the AW test?
I sat it the first time in 2011, and then I came home and regrouped and sat it again in 2012, but I did it in Missouri. I did it at Heartland.
So you were starting to take the AW before you started, like, competing then?
No, it all happened at the same time.
Okay.
So my first contest was in April of 2011,
Yes.
and I sat the exam in the fall.
Okay.
So I had a couple contests, 2 or 3 contests to get ready for that exam.
Mm-hmm.
And then thought, yeah, I got this.
Well, that's what I was kind of wondering about when you said, Craig said, just come compete.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering, like, if you already had plans to go to the WCBs, or...
I wanted to. Like, it was aspirational.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I did have that thing of, I don't deserve to be there.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be there. And it was the old system. So early on, to decide what category you were, it wasn't like, okay, you're new to the WCB, start at novice, go 1, 2, 3. For me, hey puppy. For me, it was, if you had competed open at a local contest but hadn't won open, then you were a Cat 3.
Yeah.
So I jumped right into Cat 3. I skipped novice 1 and 2, and I regret that. I should have worked the system better and gotten involved. That would have helped me more, and I think it wouldn't have slowed me down as much in my progress.
Instead of jumping straight into the open, essentially, in the WCB. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is, Cat 3 is the hardest to do well in. Not the hardest to do well in, but it's a small group.
Yeah.
Like, Cat 3 historically is the smallest category as far as number of competitors.
Mm-hmm.
There were times where we placed through 4th in Cat 3 at a contest. Because there were only 4 Cat 3 competitors. You didn't place through 6.
Yeah.
And, like, because of that, like, I think Robbie Medeiros was still in Cat 3 when I started. Bill Kiner was in there, and he was tough. Like, there were a bunch of tough guys in Cat 3 that were really dedicated and really going hard. And it was hard for me to feel like I was making headway.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have done it a little bit differently. But I kept at it because I didn't want to quit. But the AW, like getting ready for the associate exam, is what pushed me to go ahead and jump in the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I kind of had to say, damn the torpedoes. Because I wanted to do the AW from the first time that I found out that was an exam.
Yeah.
Just because it was a step beyond. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to step beyond what we offered. And
Here, like, in the United States.
Yeah, here in the U.S. Because that's something, like, it might be a little controversial, but I feel like we have a poor educational structure in the U.S. It's possible to become exemplary in the U.S. as a farrier, but it's a hard path. It's not laid out for us like it is in the U.K. Over there, it's a little more laid out and a lot better structured so that the opportunity for them isn't as overwhelming as the opportunity for us. So for us to get to a higher level and do things to a very high standard, you have to be willing to work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to spend a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of travel in order to get the experiences to be better.
Do you think the money part is what probably keeps people from us in the United States from going and trying to take that test, or do you think it's because it's difficult?
Both. I think it's low column A, low column B.
Yeah.
But more people are taking it. Like,
But
when I took it, I think there were like 4 or 5 fellows in the U.S., Americans who had achieved the fellowship.
That's the FWCF.
Yeah, FWCF. So if you count them, I would have been the 15th American to get the AWCF,
Okay.
right? because there were 10 guys who had the AW when I got it, when I passed it. And when I passed it, there were 3 of us that passed. 6 of us sat the exam and 3 of us passed.
Who were the other 3?
Jeremiah Harris down in Arizona,
right?
And Travis Burns.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of the beginning of me and Travis being really good friends.
And he doesn't live too far away from you, doesn't he?
It's like 5 hours or something. He's just in the next state.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see him as much as I'd like, but I see him a lot.
Now, the FW, that's above the... Just the next step.
Yes, that's the next step. And there's a couple steps beyond that now. It used to be that the FWCF was like
The
top of the pile. But now they've gone a little more academic. I think they were 2 steps beyond.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, basically you can get a doctorate
Oh, shit.
in being a horseshoer. Yeah, I think.
Is that what they're offering through the Royal Veterinary College?
That's a little
Or is that
different.
different?
I'm not sure what that like.
Because
I'm
that's what
ignorant
Pat
on
Riley.
that. Yeah,
went
Pat Riley's
through. He went
program.
through that.
Yeah.
Right on.
But like in the fellow, that's my next goal, is to work on my fellowship.
Have you started working on it yet, or?
I'm conceptualizing the study right now. So you have to do a research project as part of it.
Okay.
And I've got to, I got some really good ideas this weekend that I'm not going to talk about on this. But I've got some good ideas, and I need to start doing the literature review for it and looking at the research that'll support what I want to do.
How long did it take you to pass, like, the AW portion? Like, how long did you work on it?
Because I didn't pass it the first time,
Yeah.
it was about a year and a half. So what I tell people is at that time, if I did all the accounting for it, I had a year and a half of my life and about $25,000 invested in preparing for it,
Jeez.
including testing fees and doing the equivalence fee, to get the diploma, because you have to have the journeyman plus 2 years in order to get the diploma equivalence.
See, it's something I don't necessarily know a ton about how to get, like, your AW or whatever, or what's involved or what it entails to
Oh, what the
pass
exam
that.
is?
Yeah.
So the exams, it's kind of broken into 2 parts, but technically it's 3.
Okay.
Because there's a practical and a theory. But part of the practical is modern materials. And you can get a partial pass on modern materials. And I actually passed the modern in the UK.
Okay.
And that's where you have to perform a veterinary procedure, where you would assist a veterinarian, and a farrier procedure, both on a cadaver limb, using modern materials.
Okay.
So using Equilux, methyl methylacrylate, or Superfast, or anything, whatever you were using. And the veterinary procedure is usually some sort of you're cutting into sensitive tissue.
Oh, shit.
So I had to seek out a chip on P3, and I had a 5/8 hole. I could make a 5/8 round hole to find a chip on P3. And it was it wasn't an actual chip. It was a hypothetical chip.
Okay.
But they told me where they wanted me to find on that coffin bone. I had to find that spot, dig to it, and tell them, yeah, I'm here.
And this is something that you would do, out in the field, essentially?
Or not alone. So that's the thing. These are things that are not alone.
Yeah.
That's when you become a veterinarian's tool. We have a pair of nippers, and that's our tool. There are times that farriers need to be veterinarians' tools.
Uh-huh.
We're the hands that do the work because we know how to do it.
Right.
We're more familiar with the tools, so even though they know, hey, I want to notch out the hoof wall in order to remove a keratoma, they don't know how to use those tools as well as we do.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah. So we use the tools, and they tell us where to be, but we have to have the anatomical knowledge to know when to stop. If you're cutting out a keratoma, you're just going until you hit sensitive lamina. You're not, you want to get to the stratum internum and quit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go until it goes, because you just hit the coffin bone.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to make things worse.
Right.
That was my awesome impersonation of a Dremel going bad.
Well done.
Yeah. So you have the modern materials. I passed that over there. The theory portion at that time was 6 questions. You got to throw 1 out. You only had to answer 5. But you
Okay.
have a complete written answer. And it's funny because people will be like, so it was like essay? And it's like, that's too simple. Like sometimes it was an outline, sometimes you had to do diagrams. Like some of the questions you have to diagram it and give an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it you give a bullet point list. Like you have to read the question in order to find out how to answer the question.
And then do you decide those, or do they decide it, the testers? As
What?
far as like, you said the essay's too easy. Do you have to make all of them different, or do they decide
No, the question itself tells you how it's being,
Yeah.
how you
okay.
answer.
Oh, okay.
So it might say, like I had one of the questions was using diagrams, describe all the coffin bone fractures. They might have said pedal bone, they might have said P3. I can't remember what the language was, but it was describe the different types of coffin bone fractures. And so I drew all those coffin bone fractures. And then it said, describe how you personally have dealt with one of those types of fracture. So then it's telling a story. And it has to be like a timeline type chronology of how it presented, how the shoeing plan was like developed between you and the veterinarian, how you executed the shoeing plan, what the follow-up was, what the conclusion was.
Mm-hmm.
So you tell this whole long story.
Are you under a time limit in the theory portion?
It's
Yeah.
2.5 minutes or 2.5 hours to answer 5 questions. So you've got a half hour per question. But you figure it out that you have about 25 minutes per question to write.
Yeah.
So like I had a timer going. There was a clock on the wall. I kept track of the time. And at 25 minutes, I better be wrapping that question up.
Got it. Yeah.
And so I did them in order of, like, I knew that I could answer this question quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'd get it done in 15 minutes. I just banked 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'd answer this question. It's like, oh, this one's going to take me 20. Well, I banked 5 more minutes.
So
Now I've got 15 extra minutes for that one that I really know so that I can knock it out of the park.
So technically, like, they're not saying you have 30 minutes per question.
No.
You're just setting up a system for
Yeah.
yourself in order to be prepared.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I
I
think
see.
that there's a system for everything, whether it's written theory or whether it's, I mean, there's a system for this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not just flying off by the seat of your pants. There's a way that you're running this. You set that system up in your head.
Try to.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's not cohesive and you're going to spend hours editing,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to do that. It's easier if we can one take it.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing with anything with us, right? Like, and that's even everyday work. When you work, you set it up so that you do one thing at a time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Hopefully you don't screw up and have
I'm
to
going to do
redo
my
it.
knife work. I'm going to do my nipple work. I'm going to do my rasp work. I'm not going to have to go back to my knife work because I did it right.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I'm going to make my shoe or shape my shoe. I'm going to burn my shoe. And I'm not going to have to go back to it because I did it right. Because I have a system.
Yeah.
And I think that's important in everything. Every shoe I've got a system for.
I mean, that's pretty much how I revolve everything in my life, you know, as far as whether I'm starting my day, getting ready for the day. You
Yeah.
know, I've got a system for every day.
And
you know,
we
how I
all
my
do
life.
it. We call it a routine, but it's not. It's not just a routine. It's a system that helps you succeed at whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my system for that written. The practical at that time, and there's other portion that we'll get to in a sec. The practical was you watch horse trot for soundness, and then they assigned you a task,
Okay.
and you had no idea what that task could be. The list of shoes that they had that they could give you was encyclopedic. Like I had measurements for a caulk and feather because that was on the list still. It's not on the list anymore.
Oh.
The AW exam has changed a little bit. It's less all-encompassing. It's a little more therapeutic than it was,
Okay.
right? But which is fine. So that portion, it's a 2.5 hour limit. You got 2 feet, and it's whatever they ask for. And I had in England, I had to do an equilibrium bar shoe on the front with, I can't remember how they described it, but basically they left it open whether you could quarter clip it or side clip it.
So does
So
that
it
make
was
a
2
big?
clips.
Oh, so they just said 2 clips, and they you didn't necessarily know if it needed to be side
Yeah.
clipped or quarter clipped.
Yeah. And you don't really get to talk to your examiners and figure out what they mean.
Oh.
It's a lot more hands off and like
You
you're on your
figure it
side,
out.
I'm on my side.
Uh-huh.
Because it's an examination. They're looking at you as a farrier and saying, "Are you at a standard?" And it's kind of cool.
So did you get like penalized for what clips you ended up doing?
So I did quarter clips. So I put my clip between 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan Ferry was the head examiner for that. And years later, I did a clinic with his brother Jim and made an equilibrium bar shoe for a horse that came in. Like, it fell on me to make it. And I asked him where he wanted the clips, and he was like at the quarter clips between 1 and 2. And I was like, I bet I did that right. I bet Ellen liked that too. But I had to do that in a spavin shoe behind.
Okay.
And that's trippy. I
Why?
had nailed on a spavin before that.
Yeah.
I'd made them, so I had a system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'd never nailed one on. And to nail on a spavin shoe the first time under pressure of people, and I came huge because I was using 381 that I didn't know how to use.
I don't
And-
remember. Is their 3/8x1 smaller than ours or bigger than
It's
ours?
stronger than ours.
Okay.
So
That's-
our half-inch section is nicer than theirs. Their 3/8 section is nicer than ours.
okay, that's the way. Yeah.
Right. But anyway, that was that, and you also had to do a live horse evaluation and a radiographic evaluation. So there's a standing live horse where you're just going over it, talking about blemishes and unsoundnesses and just gross anatomy of a horse. There was a trot up where you had to identify a lameness, talk about why it was lame. They would give you a scenario so that you're like, we want this horse to be a brood mare in order to produce a 3-day eventer. Would she be a good option for that? And so you have to look at the horse and know, like, be able to tell what the age of the horse is, be able to, they don't really give you signalment other than it's a mare used for this purpose. You don't know what the age of the mare is, you don't know what her history is, anything like that. And you can ask questions at
Yeah, I
that
was
point.
going to say, can you ask?
Yeah, you can ask
gather info.
questions,
Yeah.
and you may get an answer that helps. You may not. Like they help you as much as they can because they actually I realize now they want you to succeed. That part's no different than the AFA. Like as an examiner, I want candidates to succeed. I want them to succeed because they should, not because they showed up.
You got to actually work for it.
Yeah, if you work for it,
attain
and you
it.
deserve it. I want you to get it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a barrier of entry. So you have to do that, and then you spend time with a veterinarian because there's 3 examiners. There's a head examiner, a farrier examiner, and a veterinary examiner.
Mm-hmm.
And the veterinary examiner has a horse in front of you that you're talking about that, evaluating it for a lameness, evaluating the job that's on it, knowing why the job that's on it is on it. You're looking at radiology that may or may not be related to that horse. You have to be able to identify radiographic landmarks, be able to look at it and know how radiology works.
So how would that work? Like when you say that it may or may not be related to that horse, like.
So if a horse is standing there that's wearing a navicular type package, maybe it's wearing something that's wedged up in a bar shoe, or
So are they trying to get you to?
they just want to see what you know.
Yeah.
So there's no trick to it. There's no anything. It's just they want to find out what you know.
Okay.
So the last thing you do, and throughout all this, you have a shoe display that you made ahead of time to bring with you. And it can be handmade, it can be machine made, it can be modified.
How many shoes are on that board?
I want to say 7, but I might be wrong. It might be more than that. Do you know, Kurt?
Offhand, I don't remember. There's 6 mandatory,
Yeah.
and then I almost think you got to have 10 now.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. I had a pile of them.
man, I don't remember now.
And I got some freeze-dried feet from Allie, and I fit shoes to those freeze-dried feet and put magnets in the feet so that the shoes would stick to them and show how I wanted to fit them.
Uh-huh.
You kind of walk the dog with that because it's homework. And you want to show them what you are, but that's not what passes or fails you. That's just like giving them a business card.
I think you're right. I think there's 6, but there's those mandatories.
Yeah.
You got to have a heart bar,
Yeah.
a raised angle shoe,
Yeah.
and
Fish
fishtail.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get in the syllabus you get to choose, but there are right at the top of the syllabus it does say the fishtail, patent bar.
Oh, okay.
Like those are mandatory shoes that have to be on the list.
Right.
So
Those shoes, like, they come into question when you have your oral exam. So you sit in a room, like we're in an office. I sat in an office across the table from these 3 other people, and they're basically keeping you there until they stump you. And I thought that meant you needed to know everything. And no, they're just seeing what your weaknesses are. If you had a soft spot in your written exam, or you had a soft spot in your prior oral exam with the live horse evaluation, or whatever, if they see a weakness, that's when they exploit it and see how deep that weakness is.
Oh, so they pry.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And so of the 3 of us that passed, I remember my oral exam and Travis's oral exam well, because Travis went in really early on because B comes before P. So Burns went in way early.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept him for like an hour. They're supposed to keep you for 15 to 20 minutes. It took that long for them to give up on stumping him.
Oh, dang.
Every question they asked, he answered.
Yeah.
And just knowing Travis now, it's like he probably just real matter-of-factly answered. You know? Because
So were you like sweating bullets at that point? Like, oh, God.
no, that's the thing is I never really got nervous about that because that's talking to people, and I'm decent at talking to people.
Oh, yeah.
They kept me for 5 minutes.
Why?
I was in there for 5 minutes, and they stumped me because I conflated capsular ligaments and annular ligaments
Uh-huh.
and said that one was the other. And they were like, that's very good. And then they talked to me about my shoe display. They were like, how did you trim those freeze-dried feet? Because we're trying to do a project with that, but we don't know how to trim those things. And I was like, oh, angle grinder and a Dremel. You know? But it was kind of cool because I was in for 5. He was in for close to an hour, and we both passed.
Oh.
Right? So they were seeing that weakness, and that was my biggest weakness.
Okay.
Was that I confused some anatomical structures.
I'm just wondering, as far as like, so you passed, but they stumped you and you got it wrong. Like, how is that?
Because that wasn't the end of it. Like,
Oh, okay.
That was just for them to say, hey, he did this on his theory. He did this on the horse. He did this with his live horse evaluation. He did all these things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he understands this. Let's see if he does or not.
Mm.
And I answered the question. They asked me a question about annular ligaments, and I answered it and said capsular ligaments. And then they asked me another question. I was like, wait, I need to go back and change my first answer because I was wrong about that.
So you realized it.
I realized it in the middle of it, and the veterinarian was the person that asked, and I think it was James Sutton, and he just kind of grinned and he looked at me and said, "No, you're right."
Oh, okay.
Like and they were very kind. Like I had Sandy Beveridge, Gary Hood, and James Sutton when I passed, and they were amazing. Like those guys just really helpful. Like my live horse evaluation, the horse had a bog spavin,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking about how unfit the horse was to do the job that they wanted it to do because I didn't like its hocks. And I couldn't tell him why I didn't like its hocks. And I stuck my thumb in that bog up to the first knuckle and was like, yeah, just there's something about these hocks. And then we walked off because I got done quick. And I'm like walking to my next station waiting, and Sandy had to go to the restroom. He's walking by me, and as he's walking near me, I said, "Bog spavin, that's the word you were looking for, right?" And he goes, "You stuck your fucking thumb in it, lad." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I did." But I think that actually benefited me, right? Because I still got the answer right. It just wasn't officially during that time. Mm-hmm. Because they're not looking at you. It's not like here's the hard fast time limit. They're looking at you from the time you get there until the time you leave.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And it's like I was really impressed by it, and I'm really supportive of it. I think it's a great program. I encourage anybody to do it. Again, no barrier of entry. Come on.
Kurt, you said you're going to be trying to get it, right?
I've worked at it a bit. It's
Tough?
It's mostly I've been dipping my toes in the pool. But yeah, it is definitely a goal that I would like to work towards.
Yeah. Something to work towards, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just another, depending on what you're aiming at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's something to keep you moving forward.
I don't feel like I'm smart enough to do it, so.
Don't think like that. So it's not about being smart. It's about being able to learn.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, maybe, yeah.
Like, you ever talk to people about IQ? Like, people hear IQ and think that means it's how smart you are. It's not. It's a measure of how well you can learn. You don't have to have an IQ a high IQ in order to be able to learn. It just makes it easier.
Easier to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that I don't like is when farriers say, yeah, I'm not good at the book work.
That's usually me.
Yeah, don't say book work. It's theory. You don't have to use a book for it.
Yeah.
We got horses around us all the time. Go over that horse and feel all those structures and know what they are. You know, if a horse dies and you got a cool client, be like, hey, can I cut its legs off? Take him home and chop him up with a steak knife.
Try to figure it out.
Like, if you got a picnic table and a pocket knife, you can do a dissection at home.
It's true, I guess.
You just need to have a client who's cool with you doing that, or someone who's cool with you doing that. If you have a way to get a dead leg at home by yourself dissection with an open textbook, it teaches you reams.
Yeah, a
Like,
lot more than I'd ever get by just staring in the book and
Yeah, the book, like, just
When you
looking
can
at
put
a
your
book.
hands on it,
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
a huge difference.
So
Because
don't discount yourself and be like, I'm too dumb for that. That's bullshit. You know, so Russ Height is a really good friend of mine, and I don't think he'd mind me telling this to the world. Russ sat as a certified farrier forever. He was CF, and he never went beyond that. And I'd push him every now and then, kind of like I just push Kurt, and be like, when are we going to do that journeyman? When are we going to do that journeyman? His practical skill was there. Russ is dyslexic. He struggles to read. He doesn't struggle to comprehend. He struggles to read. And I was talking to him on the phone one morning driving to work and said, so we're going to do that journeyman? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, all right, so here's the thing is if you want to do the journeyman, I'll come up with a strategy to help you study. You don't have to answer me right now. As a matter of fact, don't. I'll talk to you tomorrow and you'll tell me whether you want to do it or whether you're going to keep being wishy-washy. Like, I was kind of a dick. And I hung up the phone. Like, I didn't even say bye. I just hung up the phone.
You didn't say
Yeah, it's a
kisses?
dick.
I didn't say
thing.
kisses.
You didn't say kisses.
Normally I say kisses when I
Man.
get off the phone. I say
Right.
kisses. And, yeah, the next morning he called me. He was like, I want to be a journeyman. And so we figured out a non-reading way for him to study. So he would trace pictures. He would draw pictures. He would then freehand draw them without the textbook open and label them. When he sat down for that test, he spent like 5 or 10 minutes drawing pictures on scrap paper. So he turned it into an open book exam.
Right on.
That's the way I was able to learn and actually memorize for the journeyman test was I had to draw everything and do it that way.
Bingo.
But I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, no. I have never enjoyed the theory exam of anything.
Yeah.
Like, I like to read sometimes, but I hated it.
Yeah.
Like, I hate doing theory. Like, no, I want to go out and make horsey shoes and
Yeah, beat steel.
beat steel and smell bad when I burn shoes on and, like, you know, have cruddy hands. But the other side of it's important, too. If we want to be taken seriously, we need to know those things. Do you think?
Yeah. The vocabulary that you learn
Yeah.
alone is
Important.
important.
Well, I think we got some lunch coming in for us.
We got lunch. Sweet.
Nice.
I'm getting hungry myself and figured we have you guys here in the room and do a podcast and get to know Jason a little bit more since
Well, thank you.
It was really good for me. I appreciate you coming in.
yeah.
Well, we appreciate you for coming in. Yeah. And helping us out with the benefit clinic. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. We are, like, the reason we're all here is because Sarah Baker had a bad go. And she's a really good person, and she's working really hard. Like, that's somebody who's starting out their career. I think it's really important that she gets back on her feet. It made my day yesterday when she came in here.
How long has she been like shoeing up to this point?
I don't know.
I don't either, unfortunately.
Not a terribly long time. I know that she's 24, 25, something like that.
That's a bummer that
Yeah,
it had to happen, to her.
and I hope she full recovers because from the time that I heard about her injury to now, she's already recovered a massive amount.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm just tickled to death because love her to death. She's great.
Mhm.
She's been competing with us. Like she's been competing Cat 1. I think Cat 1. I know that she competed in novice, but she's working the system.
Yeah.
And I hope she can keep working the system. I hope that what we're doing here helps.
Yeah, it seemed
For
like
sure. Yeah.
pretty good turnout this weekend as far as people coming in and
Yeah.
donating for the auction and everything like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it sounds like the online auction. Oh, we'll find out here in a minute. It
Yeah.
closed while we were in here.
Yeah.
Oh, did it?
We'll find out how the online auction finished up.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully I didn't screw you guys on items if you're trying to buy them.
We'll find out in a minute. I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
We ran the bid up on a few things. So.
Oh, did you? Well, we thank
It's a
you
little
guys.
insider
Yeah,
trading.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks everybody for listening to another episode of Forge and Braids podcast.
Kisses.
Yeah.